Bible Club, it's Bible Club, it's Bible Club in our town. There's singing, there's laughing, let's get the word on the ground. We're all excited, and we are all delighted. It's Bible Club, Bible Club, Bible Club, Bible Club, Bible Club in our town.
I only have 3 Bibles, so let's go over here. Yeah. All right, look up. Now, our lessons are from, can you tell us what book of the Bible our lessons are from? Did somebody say Leviticus? Leviticus? Leviticus, that's right. We've had a bunch of lessons from Leviticus about sacrifices and priests and the way God wanted his people to live. And last week, remember what last week was? What last week was from Leviticus chapter 16, the Day of Atonement. That's right. Leviticus. But our verse I want you to look up is in 1 Corinthians. So where's 1 Corinthians? Is that in the Old Testament or the New Testament? It's in the New Testament. I'm going to tell you it's in the New Testament. So go way back toward the back of the Bible. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, Romans, 1 Corinthians. So 1 Corinthians chapter 5. 1 Corinthians chapter 5. We just have to have our hand there. Is that 1 Corinthians? So, okay, 5, it's going to be like verse 7. 1 Corinthians 5, 7. So turn the page there. Okay, you're going to be ready when we get there, but it's a little ways later. Now, last week, remember we talked about very important days? We talked about important days that we celebrate. Remember, what were some of the important days we talked about that we celebrate? Remember? Christmas. We talked about Christmas. And the other one that has to do with Jesus that we celebrate? Class? Easter. Christmas and Easter. And then we talked about the 4th of July. And then we started talking about the very most important day of the year for the children of Israel. And can you remember what was the most important day of the year for the children of Israel? I said it like 2 minutes ago. The Day of Atonement. That's right. And on the Day of Atonement, can you tell me something about something that they did? How did they celebrate, or what did they do on the Day of Atonement? Just tell me one thing so that other people can answer too. Maddie. They were sad all day. Why were they sad all day? Why would they be sad on that day? All day. Maddie? They were remembering the sins of the nation. So they were sorry for the sins. Do you remember something else? How did they celebrate that day, Jasmine? Okay, what else did they do on that day? They didn't do anything. They didn't do any work. They didn't do any work. They just thought about the things that they had done wrong for the whole last year. Yes. Can you remember any other thing? We're going to just keep reviewing while the train comes by. Can you remember anything else? Anna, you remember something else? After the sacrifices, they were happy. That's right. And after the train leaves, we'll be happy. So after the sacrifices, they were happy. What sacrifices? Remember? They had certain sacrifices. What were the sacrifices? You remember one of them? Which one? What do you remember? They killed a goat. That's right. And when they killed the goat, the blood of the goat covered the sins. Whose sins did the blood of the goat cover? This would be, you have to be extra good memory. Do you remember? The sins of who? You forgot? Who? The other one. The goat's blood covered the sins of the people. Yep. And then they took the other goat, right? and led it out into the wilderness to show that those sins were forgotten and taken away. But the priest, he had to have a sacrifice for himself and his family too. And as we finished last week, Tyler, you guys just settle down, okay? I know it's tight there. As we finished, we remembered that we don't do a Day of Atonement anymore, do we? Because Jesus is the sacrifice for us. For anybody who wants to have their sins covered, does Jesus' blood only cover our sins? No, his blood takes our sins away, right? So, but anybody that wants to have their sins taken away and wants them taken out into the wilderness, forgotten from God forever and ever, they have to turn to Jesus and believe on him and what he did to have those sins forgiven. So, all right, we have other holidays that we celebrate. We have Memorial Day. Kids, do you remember what Memorial Day is? What is Memorial Day for? Abby? No, it's not for the presidents. We have President's Day, and President's Day is in February because at least two of our greatest presidents' birthdays were in February. February 12th, no. Is that one George Washington? That's Abraham Lincoln's. February 21st, can't remember. Because I used to know this, but then we just started celebrating all the presidents. Anyway, we remember our presidents on President's Day. Memorial Day. Why do we celebrate Memorial Day?
Because it thanks to the people that served the army.
That's very, very close. That's very, very, very close. And we do that, but we kind of confuse things because Memorial Day is when we remember the people who gave their lives. Memorial Day is for she said the ones who served, and that's Veterans Day. But you have to have served in order to give your life, so we remember them too. And the ones that served were willing to give their lives, so that we kind of confuse those. Anyway, we celebrate those different ways, and today, last week we talked about the most important holiday, and this week we're going to talk about we're going to talk about 3 other holidays. Why do we have these holidays? Why do we in America have holidays? To celebrate stuff, but we celebrate stuff so that we can, Jasmine, what do you think? Okay, that's what we do, but we need to do these things so that we can, I don't think anybody's going to guess this, but we'll see. Thank the people. Okay. Anybody else got an idea? I'm going to tell you, it's so that we can remember. Now, we weren't there when it all happened, but we have these holidays. We weren't there on July 4th when the Declaration of Independence was signed, were we? But we have that holiday so we can remember what was done. We have Memorial Day so that we can remember. We weren't there in 1812 when people died so that we could have our freedom. We weren't there in 1944 when people died so that we could have our freedom. But we have Memorial Day so we can remember the people that, boys, put that away. No, we don't need to eat right now. So we have the holiday so we can remember what people did for us. How our nation got to be what a great and special place that it is. And God wanted his people Israel to remember what he did. What did our verse say? It says, I am the Lord your God, which brought you out of the land of Egypt. Therefore shall ye observe all my statutes and my judgments, and do them. So observe. We observe the 4th of July. We observe Memorial Day. And God had some feasts, some national celebrations that he wanted them to observe. Now, before he talked, and this is all from, later on, you can look up Leviticus 23. This is all from Leviticus chapter 23. And before he talked about any of these special holidays, he told them about the Sabbath day. Now, the word Sabbath has part of it, the number 7. God reminded them that on the Sabbath day they were supposed to rest, and he wanted them to observe the Sabbath day every week. Now, I'm trying to help you here. How many days are in a week? 7. Oh, there's that number 7 again, right? And so for the Israelites, the Sabbath day was the 7th day. Now, what is the 7th day of the week? Saturday is the 7th day of the week. Sunday's the first day of the week. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Saturday is the 7th day of the week. Now, did God do anything special, or did he set the 7th day? When was the first time that God set the 7th day of the week aside and did something different than all the other days? Maddie? That's right. What did he do different on the 7th day from all the other days? He rested. Right? All the other days, on the first day he made something, on the second day he made something, on the third day, fourth day, fifth day, sixth day, he made everything that we can see all around us in 6 days, and on the 7th day, he rested. Did God have to rest? No, he has all the power in the world. But he rested because he set a pattern for us to follow, and he wanted all people always to go work 6 days and rest on the 7th day. Do you remember that another time when he said something about the Sabbath day and how important it was? It was in the 10 Commandments. Does anybody remember which commandment talks about the Sabbath day? Do you remember? He said, thou shalt not, thou shalt not, thou shalt not. And then the 4th one he said, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Okay? So let's just pay attention over here. He was goofing off and fell out of his chair. So, God wanted the Sabbath day to be special. And again, he told the children of Israel on the Sabbath day, I don't want you to do any work. I want you to stop all the things that you do. I want you to sit with your family, do things with your family. I want you to remember the things that I have done for you. I don't want you don't work for yourself. Just remember the things that I have done for you on the Sabbath day, and I want you to do it every single 7th day. And that was easy for a while. But you know what? After a while, people started thinking, I don't know what they thought exactly, but maybe it was something like, man, I didn't finish that job I wanted to do yesterday. I know it's the Sabbath day, but if I just spend a little time working, then I'll be all set for the next day. And what did he do? He went out and worked on the Sabbath day. And God had told him not to work on the Sabbath day. So it was not that hard for people not to do what God wanted them to do. Now, we have Bible club on Saturday, but not because it's the Sabbath day. We, as Christians, we have one day a week we set aside for God, and that is Sunday. That's the day Jesus rose from the dead. And so we remember God and what Jesus did for us on Sunday. That's why we all go to church on Sunday. I hope we all go to church on Sunday, right? So, lots of times, lots of people all around the world today, they go out on their boats. They do all kinds of things besides think about God and what he's done for them. But God still wants us to set aside a day out of every week for him. I'm not saying that we can't mow the grass, but we should be going to church. We should be thinking about what God wants for us. And so that is the Sabbath day. So the Sabbath day was a special day they were to celebrate. It was not a big celebration, but they were supposed to set it apart from all the other days of the week. And when were they supposed to observe the Sabbath day? Every 7 days. And they called their 7th day the Sabbath. We call the 7th day Saturday. We give one day to the Lord, and we do that on Sunday because Jesus rose from the dead on Sunday. So then God told Moses, tell the people of Israel that in April, now they didn't use the word April, they have different names for their months, but it is in April in our year. In April, I want you to celebrate a very, very special day. I want everyone to remember, what does that verse say? It says, I am the Lord your God, which brought you out of the land of Egypt. Do you remember what God did when he brought them out of the land of Egypt? Who remembers what God did when he brought them out of the land of Egypt? Who remembers what God did when he brought them out of the land of Egypt? I'm giving you a hint on this page, right? Isn't this a big hint? For some people, it's a big hint. Remember what God did when he brought them out of the land of Egypt? Abby? To the boat and water. No. Jasmine?
Lord said not to get out of your home and put blood over the door.
Yes. He said, don't leave your home. Put blood over the post, on the side post, and over your door, because that night, when he delivered Israel out of Egypt, what happened? What happened in the houses where there was no blood over the door? Do you remember that, Amberlyn? Maddie?
All the babies died.
The firstborn babies, not all the babies. The firstborn babies died. But did anybody die inside the homes that were covered by the blood? No, those homes were passed. They were passed over. And so they celebrate. He said, I want you every year to remember what I did for you way back then. And you're going to observe the Passover. So every year, even still, Jewish people observe the Passover. We don't observe the Passover, but Jewish people still observe the Passover. And what are they remembering? When God delivered them from Egypt. Because that night, the death angel went through Egypt, and the Egyptians, and especially the evil, wicked Pharaoh, finally said, go! You can go, because forever they were slaves, and you wouldn't let them go. But he told them they could go. And so, when they would go through the special ceremony on the 14th day of the month, they would do certain things, and their children even were trained. Every year, one of the children would say, why are we doing what we're doing? And his father would say, we were slaves in Egypt, and God delivered us out of Egypt. And he would tell the story. So that why did God want him to tell the story every year? So they would remember what God did for them. Now, then, in the same month, in fact, the next day, so the 14th day they celebrated the Passover. On the 15th day they started a week-long feast. And it was called the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Now you might not remember this, so I'm just going to say. That same night when they killed the lamb, in the Passover celebration, and they ate it in their house, and God said they were to eat it with unleavened bread. Now that's a big word. Grandma probably knows what leaven is. Okay? But leaven, does anyone else know what leaven is? Grandma, what's leaven? It's what makes bread rise. So it's yeast. Yep. So, but if bread has no leaven in it or no yeast in it, it's very flat. Probably very much like a cracker. Okay, so you have bread that's like a loaf of bread. Excuse me. And then you could have bread that's just very thin. It's not, doesn't rise at all. Maybe like a cracker, maybe very, very, just nothing to make it thick or anything like that. So, not airy. Well, God said he wanted them that night to eat their Passover meal with unleavened bread. And so, he told them later on, I want you to celebrate, and I want you to remember what I did for you, how I delivered you from Egypt, by taking a whole week and celebrating certain things, but through this whole week have no leaven in your house, and don't eat any bread with leaven in it, and it's called unleavened bread. Now the Bible later on tells us that leaven many times is a picture of sin. Now there's nothing wrong with bread that has leaven in it. It just sometimes is a picture of sin. Because leaven, a little bit of leaven gets into the dough and it spreads through the whole loaf. And that's what sin does. You let a little bit of sin in your life, and pretty soon you're sinning all over your life. You let a little bit of bad attitude in your life, and pretty soon you've got a bad attitude about everything. And so, God wanted them to celebrate the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So on the 14th day, they celebrated the Passover. And on the 15th through the 21st day, for the whole week, they celebrated the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Now, I want to tell you something. They didn't know this because they didn't have 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 7. But 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 7 tells us something about these two feasts. Anybody ready to read them? Are you ready to read 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 7? Listen while Jasmine reads. I don't know, verse 7, 5, 7. Okay, we're outside and I can't even hear, so I know you can't. It says, purge out the old leaven. Right? I don't have my glasses. Miss Sammy, can you read it extra loud so we all can hear?
Purge out, therefore, the old leaven, that ye may be a new lump, as ye are unleavened. For even Christ, our Passover, is sacrificed for us.
Oh, wow. Those two things are in that same verse, aren't they? Can you read the next verse too? Verse 8.
Therefore, let us keep the feast, not with old leaven, neither with the leaven of malice and wickedness.
Oh, leaven of malice and wickedness. See how the Apostle Paul is saying that leaven is a picture of malice and wickedness. That's bad. Get that out of our life. Keep it out. Don't even let it in a little spot. Right? Go ahead.
But with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth.
Yes. So, he talks about leaven, and he says, Christ, our Passover, is sacrificed for us. So why don't we celebrate a Passover? Even though Jews do, why don't we celebrate a Passover anymore? Why don't Christians celebrate a Passover? Huh? He did. Christ is our Passover, right? Okay, so we remember, so in April, they had the Passover, and then the next day they started a week celebrating the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And then, on the day after the Sabbath, during the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So they had the Passover, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and then there would be a regular Sabbath, like the Saturday. The day after that, they were to celebrate something else. And this they couldn't celebrate right then. Does anybody remember where the children of Israel are right now in our lessons? Where are they? Where are they?
Around the tabernacle.
They're around the tabernacle. And where's the tabernacle? Is it in Egypt? No. Is it where they're going to live the rest of their lives? No. So where is it? It's in the... It's in where? The 12? The trail. Okay. It's in the wilderness. It's in the wilderness. So how did they eat in the wilderness? Did they plant a garden? Did they have a field where they took their animals out, the oxen out, and they plowed it, and they got lots of food from their fields in the wilderness? You remember? How did they get their food in the wilderness? Jasmine? No. No. They did kill animals in their sacrifices, and they could eat them after they cooked them, but that's not how they got their food every single day. It was a miracle how they got their food every single day. Do you remember, Abby? He gave them food? Kind of yes, but how did he give them their food? Do you remember now? How? That was only one time. That was for a month, actually. They were very bad and complained, and he gave them that. But they had a certain kind of food every morning. Do you remember? Bread came from heaven. And every morning they could go out and they'd pick up as much as they needed. Remember, they picked up as much as they needed for 6 days in a row, but not on the 7th day, right? Why? Because that was the day they were not supposed to do any work. See how it all fits together? So, They didn't have crops. They didn't have gardens. But God said, when you get into the land that I'm going to give you, I want you, on the day after the Sabbath in April, after the Passover, during the Feast of Unleavened Bread, on the day after the Sabbath, the first day of the week. What's the first day of the week for us? No. Sunday. I want you, in that early time of the year, I want you to go out into your garden, and the very first fruits that come from your garden, the very first things that you can take from your garden, I want you to bring those to the tabernacle, and I want you to offer them. There's going to be lots of fruit come after. You're going to keep harvesting and harvesting and harvesting through the whole season, but I want you to bring the first fruits on that Sunday. Now, that was just supposed to be a day of thanksgiving for them. Again, even to remember how they just picked bread every single day, the same food for 40 years, but now they had fruits from their garden, and then the first day. Now, you know what? The feast, can somebody turn to 1 Corinthians? You still got it, so go to 15. No, that's Leviticus. You're looking at Leviticus 23. All right, that's good. Are you in 1 Corinthians? Go to chapter 15. So Leviticus chapter 15, verse 20. So, while she's finding that, we got to review. Passover was the 14th day of the week. You found it? Feast of Unleavened Bread was 15th through the 21st. Let's just say that the Passover was on a Friday. Let's just say Passover happened to be on a Friday. And then, what's the day after Friday? Saturday. And what's that for Jewish people? That's the Sabbath, right? So, and that would be the first day of unleavened bread. They would do that for a week. And then what's the day after Saturday? Sunday. Now, if you had the Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread started Saturday, that Sunday, that's the first day of the week. That's the day that you're supposed to bring what? What we just saw. The first fruits. Right? The first fruits. Somebody ready to read? Miss Sammy, I don't have my glasses. So you're going to have to read. Start in verse 20.
But now is Christ risen from the dead.
Oh! Now is Christ risen from the dead. Remember that Jesus rose from the dead after he died? A verse said Christ is our Passover. So Christ is our Passover, and now is Christ risen from the dead. You have to read fast before the train comes.
And become the first fruits of them that
Oh! Christ is what? The first fruits, isn't he? Now why is Christ the first fruits? The first fruit said there's a bunch more coming, right? Who's the more that comes after Jesus? Who are the more that comes after Jesus? Say. Who would it be, Luke? What do you think? Would it be? Oh, let it be. Yeah, let it be. All right, let's just try. Anybody know who's the rest of the fruit that comes after Jesus? God? No. Who? Us. Us. What are we saying? That we're going to do what? People that have believed on Jesus, we're going to do what? How are we going to go to heaven? What? We're going to raise from the dead. Just like Jesus did, right? Okay, let's keep reading.
For since by man came death, by man came also the resurrection of the dead.
Yeah.
For as in Adam all die, even so in Christ shall all be made alive.
All the way to the end of verse 23.
But every man in his own order, Christ the first fruits.
Christ the first fruits.
Afterward, they that are Christ at his coming.
Afterward, those that are Christ. Are you Jesus's? Are you Christ? Only those that have believed on Jesus are his. Not everybody is Jesus's, but if you're in Christ, if you believed on Christ, then you will rise from the dead someday. After we're all going to die, and then someday those that are in Christ will rise with him because he's our first fruits. Okay, so the Israelites had 3 April. Let's see if we can remember them. Passover, unleavened bread, and first fruits. Okay? Next week we're going to learn 3 more feasts. They had 7 special days. One was the Day of Atonement. 3 that we learned this week, and 3 more next week. And what we know is that all of them remind us of who? And his name is Jesus. That's right. Okay.